Please come in.
Hi, I'm calling. My roommate, was supposed to be home like a couple hours ago.
How old is he?
22.
Just spoke with Drew's mom, Linda Walker, just moments ago on the phone. She said she doesn't want to know what is all in this document here, this 416-page document, but had this to say about Rodriguez.
There are cases that haunt a country, not because they are unsolvable, but because the answer, when it finally comes, reveals how close evil was living to the rest of us. This is one of those cases. November 22nd, 2003. Grand Forks, North Dakota. A Saturday. The holiday shopping season has just begun, and the Columbia Mall is full of people getting a head start on Christmas. At exactly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 22-year-old Drew Katrina Sjodin clocks out of her shift at Victoria's Secret. She is a senior at the University of North Dakota studying graphic arts, a member of Gamma Phi Beta sorority, a girl from Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, a small town that shaped her into someone everyone, without exception, described the same way. Kind, genuine, nice to everyone she met. Before heading to her car, a 1994 Oldsmobile Cutlass, Drew stops inside Marshall Fields and buys herself a new purse, a small, ordinary moment. She walks out into the cold November air, new bag in hand, and dials her boyfriend, Chris Lang. The call is routine. No urgency, no fear. 4 minutes pass like any other 4 minutes between two people comfortable with each other's voice. Then something shifts. Lang hears Drew say, quietly, almost carefully, "Okay, okay." And then the line goes dead. He assumes it's a dropped call. The conversation had been so normal. He doesn't call back immediately. He waits. Time passes. 7:42 p.m. Nearly 3 hours and 40 minutes later, Chris Lang's phone rings again. The caller ID shows Drew's number. He answers. There is no voice on the other end, only static and the muffled sound of buttons being pressed on a keypad. The call lasts a moment and goes quiet again. That second call was not coming from Grand Forks. It was pinging off a cell tower near Fisher, Minnesota, 25 miles to the east. Drew Shadyn was already gone. That same night, Drew was scheduled for a second job at the El Rocco nightclub. She never showed. Her roommate and childhood friend, Meg Flatagraph, waited. And then something in her gut told her not to wait any longer. My intuition just knew something was not right.
Please come in.
Hi, I'm calling. My roommate, was supposed to be home like a couple hours ago.
How old is he?
22.
Officers arrived at the Columbia Mall parking lot and found Drew's Oldsmobile Cutlass exactly where she'd parked it. Engine off, doors locked, untouched. But beside one of the tires, half hidden in the cold, lay something that told investigators everything they feared. A knife sheath. Empty. Police quietly suspected abduction from the first hours. They suspected it may have been sexually motivated, but they kept their theory close. Releasing it publicly, they feared, could compromise the investigation before it had even begun. They pulled Drew's phone records. They contacted her service provider. The data pointed east, toward Crookston, Minnesota, toward the state line. 3 days into the search, investigators combing the area found something under a bridge along the Red Lake River near Crookston. A single black 9 West loafer. Drew's roommate Meg identified it immediately. It was the only piece of clothing belonging to Drew found during the entire search. One shoe, miles from where she disappeared. The snow was coming, the temperatures were dropping, and Drew Shadyn had not been found. 4 days after Drew's disappearance, investigators received a tip. Someone had seen a known sex offender in Grand Forks the afternoon she vanished. His name was Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. When detectives pulled his file, they didn't find a criminal history. They found a pattern, 3 decades of attacks on women, and a system that kept handing him back to the street. Born February 18, 1953 in Texas. Raised in Crookston, Minnesota. By his own account, an unhappy childhood, drug use throughout his youth, and hostility toward women, he traced to abuse. He claimed he suffered as a boy. What the court record showed was something more specific. October 1974. Rodriguez was 21. He asked an 18-year-old named Shirley Iverson for a ride home. She recognized him as a classmate's brother and agreed. He directed her out of town, grabbed her by the throat, and strangled her unconscious. Weeks later, he approached a second woman outside a Crookston theater, forced his way into her truck at knife point, drove her into the countryside, and raped her. 2 attacks, 2 victims. He pleaded guilty to aggravated rape and attempted aggravated rape. The sentence, 15 years in prison. The judge stayed it and sent him to the Minnesota Security Hospital in St. Peter for treatment instead. A 1976 psychological report described him as having paranoid, schizoid, and antisocial tendencies. Rodriguez told evaluators his aggressive impulses were not a problem to control. On April 9, 1980, while on an approved pass from the hospital to visit family in Crookston, he attacked again. He stabbed a woman and attempted to kidnap her. She escaped. She drew a composite sketch of her attacker from memory. It was precise enough to lead police directly to him. At sentencing, he asked to be sent back to the hospital. The judge refused. Until such time as there is some medical proof that something has taken place with you that will prevent you from acting out in this way, the judge told him, you should not be allowed to roam free in our society. 23 years. Minnesota State Prison. During his entire sentence, Rodriguez refused all sex offender treatment. On May 1, 2003, he walked out. 50 years old. Level 3 sex offender, Minnesota's highest risk classification. He moved back into his mother's house at 210 Adams Street in Crookston and found work hanging drywall. Shirley Iverson, his first victim, heard about his release and called it inevitable. Minnesota's registry listed him. North Dakota had no registry at all. When Rodriguez crossed that state line into Grand Forks on November 22, 2003, he was invisible to the shoppers, to the workers, to the young woman at Victoria's Secret finishing her last shift. On November 26th, 4 days after Drew disappeared, 1 day before Thanksgiving, police launched a quiet stakeout of Rodriguez's home. His neighbors later said nothing had seemed out of the ordinary. No one had suspected him. Officers brought Rodriguez in and questioned him. He was calm. He admitted to being in Grand Forks on November 22nd. He said he went to the mall to shop for clothes. He said he also caught a movie at the theater. Once upon a time in Mexico, he told them. Investigators checked the theater's listings. That film was not playing at any Grand Forks theater at the times Rodriguez claimed he saw it. Rodriguez consented to a search of his vehicle, a 2002 Mercury Sable. What investigators found inside would become the backbone of the entire case. The Mercury Sable was impounded and handed over to the crime lab. What it held was devastating. In the trunk, a knife, its blade still carrying trace amounts of a cleaning solution, as if someone had tried to wipe it down. Investigators compared it to the sheath found beside Drew's car in the Columbia Mall parking lot. It was a match, the same set. The knife had been there, beside her car, and then it had been in his trunk. In the rear seat and on the back window, small blood splatters. The DNA was tested against a sample taken from Drew's toothbrush at her apartment. The probability that the blood belonged to anyone else on Earth was, in the words of the forensic scientist, almost none. On Drew's coat, recovered separately, strands of hair matching Alfonso Rodriguez Jr.'s DNA. There was also mall surveillance footage. It showed Rodriguez inside the Columbia Mall earlier that afternoon, before 5 o'clock, before Drew walked out of Marshall Fields and into the parking lot. He had been there. He had been watching. On December 1st, 2003, 9 days after Drew Shadyn disappeared, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. was arrested and charged with kidnapping. Drew had still not been found. The search continued through December, through January, through February. Thousands of volunteers, law enforcement from multiple states, search teams moving through frozen fields and snowdrifts. Rodriguez, in repeated police interviews, refused to say where he had left her. December 10th, Grand Forks County Sheriff Dan Hill drove to see Drew's father, Alan Sjodin, at the mall parking lot where her car still sat. Alan Sjodin had been keeping vigil there. Hill told him quietly that the search had shifted, that it was, at this point, more of a recovery than a rescue. The two men embraced briefly. Then Hill apologized. Spring came slowly to North Dakota, and on April 17, 2004, 146 days after Drew walked out of the Columbia Mall, her body was found. She was in a ravine near Crookston, Minnesota, not far from where Rodriguez lived with his mother. She was half-dressed, naked from the waist down. Her wrists had been tied behind her back. Lacerations marked her body. Her throat had been cut. Around her neck, a rope, and the remnants of a plastic grocery bag. Her phone was lying nearby. The same phone that had dialed Chris Lang, that had bounced off towers near Fisher, that had gone silent somewhere on that dark road in November. The autopsy, conducted by the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office, could not pinpoint a single cause of death. The body had been exposed to the elements for nearly 5 months. What it could confirm? Homicidal violence. 3 possibilities, each one telling. A slash wound to the throat, asphyxiation or suffocation, consistent with the plastic bag, or exposure to the cold. The medical examiner believed the neck wound was most likely fatal. Defense experts at trial disagreed, arguing she had been strangled, not stabbed, and that the notches in her neck bone came from decomposition, not a blade. The precise cause was never resolved to certainty. What was not disputed? She had been beaten. She had fought back. And she had been left in that ditch in November to be found by spring. The evidence was consistent with rape and murder. In 2013, a decade after the crime, Rodriguez would finally admit to it himself. In a death row interview with forensic psychiatrist Dr. Michael Wellner.
We're working on the disappearance of this gal, and everybody's a suspect until we can rule them out, you know. What were you doing on Saturday?
Well, I went to go and put it.
He had spotted her in the mall. He had followed her to her car. And he had made a calculation that night that would define the rest of his life and end hers.
Tell us that you went to the movie theater, but that doesn't really pan out. We're having trouble finding you on the McDonald's videotape.
Do you think maybe you were actually somewhere else rather than the movie theater? I don't know. No, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I know I wasn't at the mall. What do you feel with it?
He knew that before the victims had testified against him in those other cases, he ended up going to jail, and he figured, at his age, if he got caught this time, he was going to jail for the rest of his life. So he killed her. Because Rodriguez had transported Drew across state lines, from North Dakota into Minnesota, the case became a federal matter. That distinction mattered. North Dakota does not have the death penalty. The federal government does. The trial began in the summer of 2006. Prosecutors laid out every piece of the puzzle. On August 30th, 2006, the jury returned its verdict. Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. was found guilty of kidnapping resulting in death. On September 22nd, the jury recommended death.
Attorneys for a Minnesota man sentenced to death for killing a University of North Dakota student in 2003 are raising questions about evidence presented at trial that the student was raped. Alfonso
Proceedings
Rodriguez
stretched
Jr.
well into the afternoon today as a convicted death row murderer is appealing the decision.
On February 8th, 2007, U.S. District Judge Ralph Erickson formally sentenced Rodriguez to die. He became the 50th federal inmate placed on death row. In October 2011, defense lawyers argued he had an intellectual disability.
Tonight, we're tracking breaking news in the longtime murder case of Drew Shadyn, a Minnesota native and North Dakota college student. Convicted killer Alfonso Rodriguez is now admitting that he killed Sjodin as he sits on death row. 5 Eyewitness News reporter Jessica Miles is working to get new details tonight. She joins us live from the newsroom with the latest. Jess?
Bill, a 416-page motion was filed in U.S. court in Fargo today, and in it, 2 medical experts who interviewed Rodriguez back in June concluded he was sane when he killed Drew Shadyn 10 years ago. Sjodin was 22 years old when she was kidnapped by knife point from a Crookston mall back on November 22, 2003. Her body was found that next spring in a ravine a mile west of Crookston. The new documents out today reveal Rodriguez didn't kill her by accident, as he has maintained while on death row. The documents also give chilling new details about how he chose her as a victim. It goes into more detail about how he killed her and how he also placed a bag over her head when she began to bleed from the mouth to prevent blood from spilling into the car. His appeals have been denied all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but under what is considered now a death row prisoner's last appeal, Rodriguez, with a new set of 4 attorneys, 2 of them here in the cities, is making a habeas corpus appeal, basically claiming he is being wrongfully held.
In 2021, Judge Ralph Erickson, now elevated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit, reviewed the trial himself. The same judge who had sentenced Rodriguez to death now overturned that sentence. In March 2023, federal prosecutors, directed by U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, announced they would no longer seek the death penalty. Rodriguez was resentenced on May 18, 2023. Life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. He was moved from death row at the Terre Haute Penitentiary in Indiana to the United States Penitentiary, Coleman II in Sumterville, Florida, where he will remain until he dies. Drew Shadyn's family did not allow grief to be the only thing left behind. On July 27, 2006, President George W. Bush signed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act into law. Embedded in it was a piece of legislation called Drew's Law. It renamed the National Sex Offender Public Registry to the Drew Shadyn National Sex Offender Public Website.
Just spoke with Drew's mom, Linda Walker, just moments ago on the phone. She said she doesn't want to know what is all in this document here, this 416-page document, but had this to say about Rodriguez.
He's an evil person, Jessica, and evil people tend to always want to use each and every opportunity to shine spotlight on himself, and he does not want to be executed, so he's using each and every opportunity given to him to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Linda says what we need to remember today is the victims, Drew and others. Now, we know Rodriguez is appealing, and we understand he has a court appearance coming up in December.
I can't imagine. It just aches to hear something like this.
Tonight, reaction after the sentence was overturned for the man convicted of kidnapping and killing a UND college student nearly 2 decades ago. Convicted sex offender Alfonso Rodriguez no longer faces the death penalty.
I just paused and had the whole situation flash through my mind. This happened 18 years ago. This case is an extreme example of why we have the death penalty for cases like this. I mean, if you're not going to use it in a case like this, then where are you going to use it?
He also says hearing the news of the sentencing being overturned is very difficult for him, especially on a case that still tugs at his heart.
I think my 37-year career, this is the one that sticks out in my mind as something I'll absolutely never forget. What he did was just one of the most horrific things that somebody can ever imagine, and this should have been over a long time ago.
Searchable by anyone across all 50 states, all territories, all tribal boundaries. No more gaps, no more invisible men crossing invisible lines.
Wednesday, November 22nd, officially marks the 20-year anniversary of when Grand Forks resident Drew Shadyn went missing, shocking the community, the region, and the nation.
There wasn't a whole lot going on in the nation right then.
But the nation had their eyes on Grand Forks, North Dakota.
I've never seen anything like that.
East Grand Forks Police Chief Mike Hedlund was the PIO for the Grand Forks Police Department when she went missing.
Her face is ingrained in my, in my mind. Drew's absolutely is.
He said in the time since Sjodin's disappearance, he notices the community has never forgotten her.
When I do those school talks, I'll say, who's heard of Drew Shadyn? And I've yet to have a class where nobody raised their hand. And these are kids anywhere from, like I said, elementary school and up to the high school age or even college. And they've always heard, and it's now 20 years. And there's people that weren't born, and they've heard of Drew Shadyn.
But Sjodin's memory lives on in more ways than one, including in a scholarship for young women who attend UND.
I mean, Drew's death was a tragedy to her family, to UND, to the greater Grand Forks community, and really the nation. This scholarship is a way to honor her legacy and to ensure that her memory is not forgotten.
In 2004, a scholarship was established in her name at the University of North Dakota. It still exists. 20 years later, the investigators who worked her case still keep albums from the search. 7 volumes, several thousand photographs. Meg Flategraf, Drew's roommate, her childhood friend, her sorority sister, the one who made the call that night when her gut told her something was wrong, still carries the case. I don't know that you will ever fully be healed from that experience and everything over the last 20 years.